All right, how's everyone doing this morning? Oh, whoops. I'm trying to find the right screen here. Okay, today we are going to read chapter 4 of part 2 of 1984 by George Orwell. And in the previous chapter, he met with his new lover, his new girlfriend, whatever you want to call her, again in an abandoned church. I don't really know what was the point of that chapter actually. No, I don't remember. Even though I just read it yesterday. Oh well. Well, we'll start today with chapter 4 as soon as I get some coffee. You know, someone in the comments was making fun of my large mug. I don't think it's that large. Do you think that's too large? I don't think that's very large. It's enough. It's sufficient. It's just what I need. Okay. So let's get started with chapter 4 of 1984, part 2. Winston looked round the shabby little room above Mr. Charrington's shop. So remember, in a previous chapter, Winston went back to this antique shop, this junk shop, where he purchased the journal where he writes. And when he revisited that store, that junk store, the owner took him upstairs, and there was like a little apartment up there. And Winston got it in his head, oh, I could rent this apartment and have complete privacy here. So, and now he's back at the shop. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen. Now, they use the word shabby. Let's take a look at that. Shabby means like in bad condition. If we look at some pictures, there's actually a style, like a decorating style called shabby chic, where things look old or in bad condition, but in the end, the combination of old and bad condition, like for example, this is I think a good example of shabby chic. Chic means like stylish or fashionable, so it looks like bad condition, but it's a style that people like. I like that style, actually. I enjoy that style too. But shabby means like in bad condition. These look nice. These don't look too bad. But this is a shabby shop. That means it's maybe an ugly shop, an old shop, in bad condition shop. Shabby means doesn't look very good, looks old, not taken care of. Something like that. Winston looked round the shabby little room above Mr. Charrington's shop. So the apartment, didn't look beautiful. It looked old and dirty, not very good condition. Beside the window, the enormous bed was made up, with ragged blankets and coverless bolster. Well, let's take a look at this word ragged. Actually, I think I better put some of these words up here. And I think the first word that I'll put will be shabby, which means in bad condition. Old, in bad condition, not very well taken care of, shabby. But also, I think I would like to put, what was the other word? Ragged. That's a pretty good word, too. Ragged. Let's put that up. I make little short videos practicing these words later. I put them here on YouTube and also on TikTok. Ragged. Okay, let's start with looking at what a rag is. So let's see, rags. Rags are like old material, old clothes. Clothes in bad condition that you can use. Maybe this, if you look on the left of the screen, that's an old shirt, an old undershirt, and it's so old you can't really wear it anymore. The best thing that you can do with it is maybe clean, and that's what you use rags for. You use old clothes, old material to clean. Now let's see what happens if we put ragged. So a rag is a noun, it's a thing, old material, old clothes. But let's see what kind of pictures we get if we look for ragged. Oh, you see, it's kind of a style. Everything's a style now. Everything's a fashion. Uh, these are not good examples of ragged, but see how it. But what you can see is that these are pants that are in. They're new and they're probably expensive, but they look like they're in bad condition. They're made that way on purpose. Do we have? See, this is a problem with Google that now when you look for something, you don't get what you're looking for. You get the brand name of something or the name of a movie, and they don't actually show you what that word means. Here's kind of a ragged classroom, if you can see right behind me. That's sort of a ragged classroom. It's like bad condition, just like shabby. But when you say ragged, it's usually for clothes. Okay, well, you get the idea of what ragged is here. I think. I hope. Oh, I forgot to mention, of course, if you're watching this live with me, I really like it if you ask questions. What's that word? What does that phrase mean? That just makes this more interesting. So don't think that you're bothering me if you ask questions. I want you to ask questions. That makes this a much more interesting video. We can learn from the things that we don't understand. Me too. I mean, sometimes you ask me a question and I think, I don't know. That's a really good question. Okay, let's see. Let's keep going here. The old-fashioned clock with the 12-hour face was ticking away on the mantelpiece. Tick is a sound. Tick, 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 tick. So that's, they don't make, maybe if you have an old clock, you can still hear that, but now everything is digital. So you don't hear that very much anymore. But imagine being in a quiet room and you can just only hear the clock. That used to be normal. I guess it's not so normal anymore. Okay. And a mantelpiece is if you have a fireplace. Oh, maybe I should show you a picture of a fireplace. You probably know what that is, but let's just take a look at it. Fireplace. And I want to find a good picture so I can show you what a mantle is. I think I have my picture here. Okay, so this is a fireplace where the fire is. But then you see where the decoration is? That looks like a Christmas decoration on the top. It's sitting on like a shelf. That's the mantle. That's the fireplace mantle. So this was not a wall clock, this was a mantle clock. This was a clock that sits on the mantle of the fireplace. In the corner, on the gate leg table, the glass paperweight, which he had bought on his last visit, gleamed softly out of the half-darkness. Gleaming is like reflecting light, giving light because of reflection. So the paperweight itself doesn't give light, but if light is shining on it, its surface will reflect it. So that's gleaming light. In the fender was a battered tin oil stove, a saucepan, and 2 cups, provided by Mr. Charrington. Winston lit the burner and set a pan of water to boil. He had brought an envelope full of Victory coffee and some saccharin tablets. The clock's hands said 17:20. It was 19:20, really. She was coming at 19:30. Folly, folly. Folly means like doing something stupid. And actually it's related to the word fool. So if you know fool, which is like a stupid person, folly is a noun which means something that you do that is stupid. So he's saying, this is stupid. I'm doing a stupid thing here. Folly, folly, his heart kept saying, conscious, gratuitous, suicidal folly. Gratuitous means like unnecessary. And conscious means he's doing it on purpose. He knows he's doing it. He's not stupid. He knows that this is a bad idea. That's the conscious part. Gratuitous means not necessary. I shouldn't be doing this. I don't have to do this. I've lived most of my life without doing something this stupid. That's gratuitous. And suicidal means it's going to get him killed. Suicidal folly. Of all the crimes that a party member could commit, this was the least possible to conceal. Conceal means hide. Actually, the idea had first floated into his head in the form of a vision of the glass paperweight mirrored by the surface of the gate-leg table. As he had foreseen, Mr. Charrington had made no difficulty about letting the room. Letting means renting. So Winston convinced Mr. Charrington to let him the room, to rent the room to him. And foresee means like to predict. For means in front. See means see. So foresee means see in the front, see ahead, see into the future. So as he had predicted, as he had foreseen, Mr. Charrington, I think I want to put that word foresee up here. That's a pretty good word. Foresee. That means to predict. Foresee, predict. As he had foreseen, as he had predicted, Mr. Charrington had made no difficulty about letting the room, renting the room. Letting means renting here. He was obviously glad of the few dollars that it would bring him, nor did he seem shocked or become offensively knowing when it was made clear that Winston wanted the room for the purpose of a love affair. Instead, he looked into the middle distance and spoke in generalities. So I think what he means by he looked into the middle distance, meaning maybe Winston was here and the man was here and he was... So he's not looking at Winston's face, he's looking over here and talking. So he's not addressing him directly. And spoke in generalities, meaning he didn't say anything specific. He just said very general things, nothing... let's see. With so delicate an air as to give the impression that he had become partly invisible. Privacy, he said, was a very valuable thing. Everyone wanted a place where they could be alone occasionally. And when they had such a place, it was common courtesy in anyone else who knew of it to keep his knowledge to himself. He even, seeming almost to fade out of existence as he did so, added that there were 2 entries to the house, one of them through the backyard, which gave on an alley. So Mr. Charrington doesn't want to. He wants to share this information with him. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. And oh, by the way, there's an extra entrance on the other side of the house that you can use. That's in the back. Maybe nobody will see that. But he's saying it in a very indirect way. He's not even looking at Winston as he's doing it. Under the window, somebody was singing. Winston peeped out. Peeping is like this. Winston peeped out. What's going on down there? Peeped out. Secure in the protection of the muslin curtain. The June sun was still high in the sky, and the sun filled the court below. A monstrous woman, solid as a Norman pillar, with brawny red forearms. Brawny means like thick, big, strong, fat. Oh, forearms. And these are the forearms here. So this woman had big, thick, strong, fat forearms. And a sacking apron, strapped about her middle, was stumping to and fro. To and fro means you walk this way and then you walk that way. You walk this way and you walk that way. So walking to and fro means walking in that direction and then walking in the opposite direction. And you continue that. That's to and fro. washing things which Winston recognized as babies' diapers. When her mouth was not corked with clothes pegs, she was singing a powerful contralto. It was only an hopeless fancy. It passed like an April dye. April dye. Okay. We have to do it in the prole accent. It was only an hopeless fancy. It passed like an April dye. So it was just a hopeless fancy. It was just something that could never really happen. It passed like an April day. But a look and a word, and the dreams they stirred, they have stolen my art away. So this is a love song saying, "Oh, it could never happen." Maybe in the song, one person sees another person, and for a minute, they're full of excitement and love. It was only a hopeless fancy, meaning it was just like a fantasy, a hopeless fantasy that could never happen. It passed like an April day, so it went as quickly as an April day. But a look and a word, and the dreams they stirred. We've had that word stir before, which means move. So the dreams that they made move around in my head. So a look and a word, and the dreams that they stirred, the dreams that started moving in my head. They have stolen my heart away. They have taken my heart away. So that was the song, the prole song. The tune had been haunting London for weeks past. It was one of the countless similar songs published for the benefit of the proles by the subsection of the music department. The words of these songs were composed without any human intervention whatever on an instrument known as a versificator. Wow, well, I guess just like the telescreen has become the TV, I guess the versificator will be AI creating music. But the woman sang so tunefully as to turn the dreadful rubbish — dreadful means horrible, and rubbish means garbage — the horrible garbage into an almost pleasant sound. He could hear the woman singing, and the scrape of her shoes on the flagstones, and the cries of the children in the street, and somewhere in the far distance a faint roar of traffic. And yet the room seemed curiously silent, thanks to the absence of the telescreen. Folly, 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 he thought again. It was inconceivable that they could frequent this place for more than a few weeks without being caught. But the temptation of having a hiding place that was truly their own, indoors and near at hand, had been too much for both of them. For some time after their visit to the church belfry, how do you say that? Is that belfry or belfry? I have to check now. I think it's belfry, but let's see.
Belfry.
Belfry. Okay. We'll go with that one. Belfry. For some time after their visit to the church belfry, it had been impossible to arrange meetings. Working hours had been drastically increased in anticipation of Hate Week. It was more than a month distant, but the enormous complex preparations that it entailed were throwing extra work onto everybody. Finally, both of them managed to secure a free afternoon on the same day. They had agreed to go back to the clearing in the wood. On the evening beforehand, they met briefly in the street. As usual, Winston hardly looked at Julia as they drifted towards one another in the crowd. But from some short glance he gave her, it seemed to him that she was paler than usual. So paler means like no color in your face, no red in your face, very white. That's usually what happens if you get scared or you're sick. It's all off. When something is off, that means it's finished. It can't happen. Wait, let's see. Actually, I'm going to put that. It's off. I don't know how I'll use that. That means like finished. It's off. It's all off. It means it's finished. We can't do it. She murmured, as soon as she judged it safe to speak. Tomorrow, I mean. So if you say it's all off, that could mean forever. So she clarifies and she says, I mean, for tomorrow, it's off. What? Tomorrow afternoon. I can't come. Why not? Oh, the usual reason. It started early this time. For a moment he was violently angry. During the month that he had known her, the nature of his desire for her had changed. At the beginning there had been little true sensuality in it. Their first love-making had been simply an act of the will, but after the second time it was different. The smell of her hair, the taste of her mouth, the feeling of her skin seemed to have got inside of him, or into the air all around him. She had become a physical necessity, something that he not only wanted, but felt that he had the right to. When she said that she could not come, he had the feeling that she was cheating him. But just as this moment the crowd pressed them together and their hands accidentally met, she gave the tips of his fingers a quick squeeze. It's a squeeze like that. Tips of fingers. These are the tips of fingers. Here's the squeeze. It struck him. I think I want to put that. It struck him. Let's put it struck him. Strike means hit, but the way that it is used here kind of means like realize, like he realized. It's actually a pretty common thing to say. It struck him. It struck me. Kind of means like I realized. Or that's one way that you could use it anyway. Let's see. Just want to recenter this. It struck him that when one lived with a woman, this particular disappointment must be a normal, recurring event, and a deep tenderness, such as he had not felt for her before, suddenly took hold of him. He wished that they were a married couple of 10 years, standing. He wished that he were walking through the streets with her, just as they were doing now, but openly, without fear, talking of trivialities and buying odds and ends for the household. Trivialities, that means things that are not important. If something is trivial, it means it isn't important. So talking about trivialities means talking about things that are not important, like nice weather we're having, or oh, that's a beautiful colored shirt. Those are trivialities, things that don't matter, things that are not important. Odds and ends, it's a word that we've already, I think it was from a different book though. Odds and ends means various little things. So especially things maybe that you would probably expect in a room. So odds and ends in a living room maybe would be pictures of people or little decorations, little vases or little statues or something like that. Those are odds and ends. And a store that sells odds and ends sells little things for you to put in your home, little statues, little pictures, little paintings. Those are odds and ends. So he's imagining that they're married, pretending that they've been married for 10 years, and they're walking down the street. They don't have to hide anything. They're having a conversation about trivial matters, the weather, that's a nice color you're wearing, and on their way to buy odds and ends for their house. Little pictures, little statues, little decorations for their house. He wished above all they had some place where they could be alone together, without feeling the obligation to make love every time they met. It was not actually at that moment, but at some time on the following day, that the idea of renting Mr. Charrington's room had occurred to him. When he suggested it to Julia, she agreed with unexpected readiness. Both of them knew that it was lunacy. Lunacy means crazy. So if you call someone a lunatic, that means a crazy person. But or if you call someone loony, that's kind of rude to call someone loony. That's a funny way of saying you're crazy. You're loony. Lunacy means craziness. So that's like the noun form, the concept form of crazy. It was lunacy. It was a crazy thing. It was a crazy idea. It was as though they were intentionally stepping nearer to their graves. As he sat waiting on the edge of the bed, he thought again of the cellars of the Ministry of Love. It was curious how that predestined horror moved in and out of his consciousness. If you know the word destiny, that means like what's going to happen to you. Change it. It's just already written down. You're just living your life, and your destiny, you're moving towards your destiny always. It's already planned out. That's a very, I think, religious way of looking at life. But that's what destiny means. It means like what is the end? The end that has already been planned. So predestined. If something is predestined, it means like you already know it's going to happen. So it's already been planned and it's obvious. So Winston is thinking about this predestined horror moved in and out of his consciousness. He knew one day the police would catch him. That's his destiny, his predestined horror. There it lay, fixed in future times, preceding death as surely as 99 precedes 100. One could not avoid it. But one could perhaps postpone it. And yet, instead, every now and again, by a conscious, willful act, one chose to shorten the interval before it happened. At this moment, there was a quick step on the stairs. Julia burst into the room. Burst means like explode. So she burst into the room. She came in very quickly with a lot of noise. She was carrying a tool bag of coarse brown canvas, such as he had sometimes seen her carrying to and fro. Remember, to and fro. That's moving from here to there and back again. So he'd seen her carrying this bag to and fro at the ministry. And he started, I don't know if I haven't put that word already, I think that's a good word to talk about later. To and fro, or it's a phrase. It's not really a word. To and fro. So not to and for, to and fro. There we go. So I'll just put that for later, to and fro. That means walking this way and then walking that way. Walking this way and walking that way. He started forward to take her in his arms, but she disengaged herself rather hurriedly, partly because she was still holding the tool bag. "Half a second," she said. "Just let me show you what I've brought. Did you bring some of that filthy Victory coffee?" Filthy means dirty, really dirty. "I thought you would. You can chuck it away again because we shan't be needing it here. Look here." Shan't is a contraction of shall not. So this means we shall not be needing it here. It isn't common in modern spoken English to use shan't. You could use it. It sounds nice. We shan't be needing it. But it isn't so common anymore to use that. She fell on her knees, threw open the bag, and tumbled out some spanners and a screwdriver that filled the top part of it. Underneath were a number of neat paper packets. The first packet that she passed to Winston had a strange yet vaguely familiar feeling. It was filled with some kind of heavy, sand-like stuff, which yielded wherever you touched it. "It isn't sugar," he said. "Regular sugar, not saccharin sugar." And here's a loaf of bread, a proper white bread, not our bloody stuff, and a little pot of jam. And there's a tin of milk. But look, this is the one I'm really proud of. I had to wrap it a bit of sacking around it because. But she did not need to tell him why she had wrapped it. The smell was already filling the room. Rich, hot smell, which seemed like an emanation of his early childhood. But which one did occasionally meet with even now blowing down a passageway before the door slammed, or diffusing itself mysteriously in a crowded street. Sniffed for an instant and then lost again. It's coffee, he murmured. Real coffee. It's inter-party coffee. There's a whole kilo here, she said. How do you manage to get hold of all these things? It's all inter-party stuff. There's nothing those swine don't have. Remember, swine means pig. But of course, waiters and servants and people pinch things, and pinch means, this is really pinch. Pinch is when you do something like this. This is pinching. This is pinching. But in the UK especially, pinching could mean stealing. So, and here that's how she's using it. People pinch things. People steal things. And look, I got a little packet of tea as well. Winston had squatted down beside her. He tore open a corner of the packet. It's real tea, not blackberry leaves. There's been a lot of tea about lately. They've captured India or something, she said vaguely. But listen, dear, I want you to turn your back on me for 3 minutes. Go and sit on the side of the bed. Don't go too near the window, and don't turn round till I tell you. Winston gazed abstractedly through the muslin curtain. Down in the yard, the red-armed woman was still marching to and fro, between the washtub and the line. She took more pegs out of her mouth and sang with deep feeling. They say that time heals all things. So they say that time heals all things. They say you can always forget. They say you can always forget. But the smiles and the tears across the years, they twist my art strings yet. So the smiles and the tears still give me a lot of feeling, let's say. She knew the whole driveling song by heart, it seemed. Her voice floated upward with the sweet summer air, very tuneful, charged with a sort of happy melancholy. Melancholy is like sadness, so happy sadness. So those two things together. I don't know how you would combine them. I'm no actor, so I can't help you with that. But happy, we know, and melancholy means sad. One had the feeling that she would have been perfectly content if the June evening had been endless and the supply of clothes inexhaustible. To remain there for 1,000 years, pegging out diapers and singing rubbish. It struck him as curious, a curious fact, that he had never heard a member of the party singing alone and spontaneously. It would even have seemed slightly unorthodox, a dangerous eccentricity. Like talking to oneself. Perhaps it was only when people were somewhere near the starvation level, that they had anything to sing about. You can turn round now, said Julia. He turned round, and for a second almost failed to recognize her. What he had actually expected was to see her naked, but she was not naked. The transformation that had happened was much more surprising. She had painted her face. She must have slipped into some shop in the proletarian quarters and bought herself a complete set of makeup. Her lips were deeply reddened, her cheeks rouged. Rouge is the French word for red, And so when women make their cheeks, these are the cheeks, when they make them red, that's called rouge. That's what red is. So her cheeks were rouged. She made them very red. Her nose powdered. There was even a touch of something under the eyes to make them brighter. It was not very skillfully done, but Winston's standards in such matters were not high. He had never before seen or imagined a woman of the party with cosmetics on her face. The improvement on her appearance was startling. Startling means surprise. When you're startled, you're surprised. You're so surprised that you can't move. So this is startled. That's startling. So when you use startling as an adjective, it could mean very surprised. Well, that's what it means. But also, sorry, I'm getting distracted. But also, he's so surprised, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't move. He has nothing to do. He doesn't know what to do. With just a few dabs, dab is like this. This is a dab. Dab, 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 dab. That's dabbing. With just a few dabs of color in the right places, she had become not only very much prettier, but above all, far more feminine. Her short hair and boyish overalls merely added to the effect. As he took her in his arms, a wave of synthetic violets flooded his nostril. Synthetic means fake. Violet is a type of flower. So I think she found some perfume. It was a violet scent, but it was obviously fake violet. So it wasn't real. He remembered the half-darkness of a basement kitchen and a woman's cavernous mouth. It was the very same scent that she had used, but at the moment it did not seem to matter. Scent, too? So remember, in a previous chapter, he remembered one time he wanted to have sex, and so he went to the prole part of town and found a prostitute in a dark alley, and she brought him down to her basement apartment. It was very strange, and it smelled very bad. It was a dirty apartment that smelled very bad. But when she turned on the lights, because in the alley it was dark, when he turned on the lights, she was very old. And the only reason she looked attractive was because of, I guess, the makeup and the darkness. But when the lights turned on, it was an old woman. And I don't remember what happened. I think he ran away. I don't think he did it. But that scent, the fragrance, the perfume that Julia is wearing now, it was the same fragrance of that time. And that was a very horrible time for him. That was a very traumatic experience for him. But here, he didn't care. So he could smell that. It brought him the memories of that horrible experience. But he didn't care. He was able to ignore it. Yes, dear, scent too. And do you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to get hold of a real woman's frock from somewhere and wear it instead of bloody trousers. So a frock, I guess in this case, is like a dress, a woman's dress, instead of wearing pants. I'll wear silk stockings and high-heeled shoes. In this room, I'm going to be a woman, not a party comrade. They flung their clothes off. We've had that before. Fling is like throwing. So if you fling your clothes off, you're taking your clothes and throwing them. They flung their clothes off and climbed into the huge mahogany bed. Mahogany is a type of wood. It was the first time that he had stripped himself naked in her presence. Stripping means removing all of your clothes. So this is the first time he had stripped himself naked in her presence, removed all of his clothes in her presence. Until now, he had been too much ashamed of his pale, meager body. And that word meager means weak or insufficient. And pale means no color. So his skin is very white with no red color. And it's very insufficient, very weak body. with the varicose veins standing out on his calves and the discolored patch over his ankle. There were no sheets, but the blanket they lay on was threadbare and smooth, and the size and springiness of the bed astonished both of them. "It's sure to be full of bugs, but who cares?" said Julia. "One never saw a double bed nowadays, except in the homes of the proles. Winston had occasionally slept in one in his boyhood. Julia had never been in one before, so far as she could remember." Presently they fell asleep for a little while. When Winston woke up, the hands of the clock had crept round to nearly 9. Creeping is like a slow movement, a slow, quiet movement that you don't notice. So when he says that the hands of the clock, for those of you who don't know, because you grew up in the digital age, the hand of a clock, those are the two things that move on, or three things that move on a clock. Those are the hands. But they say the hands of the clock had crept round to 9. Remember, creep means moving slowly, moving quietly. You don't notice it. So the time had passed very quickly without noticing. He did not stir. Stir means move. He did not move, because Julia was sleeping with her head in the crook of his arm, in the crook of his arm, maybe here or maybe here. Most of her makeup had transferred itself onto his own face or the bolster, but a light strain of rouge still brought out the beauty of her cheekbone. A yellow ray from the sinking sun fell across the foot of the bed and lighted up the fireplace. Where the water in the pan was boiling fast. Down in the yard, the woman had stopped singing, but the faint shouts of children floated in from the street. He wondered vaguely whether in the abolished past it had been a normal experience to lie in bed like this, in the cool of a summer evening, a man and a woman, with no clothes on, making love when they chose, talking of what they chose, not feeling any compulsion to get up, simply lying there and listening to the peaceful sounds outside. Surely there could never have been a time when that seemed ordinary. Julia woke up, rubbed her eyes, and raised herself on her elbow to look at the oil stove. "Half the water's boiled away," she said. "I'll get up and make some coffee in another moment. We've got an hour. What time do they cut the lights off at your flats?" 23:30. It's 23 at the hostel. But you have to get in earlier than that, because... Hi! Get out, you filthy brute! What is this? Suddenly twisted herself over the bed, seized a shoe from the floor, and sent it hurtling into the corner with a boyish jerk. A jerk is like this. With a boyish jerk of her arm. Exactly as she had seen her... What is going on? Exactly as he had seen her fling the dictionary at Goldstein that morning during the 2-minute hate. "What was it?" he said in surprise. "A rat. I saw him stick his beastly nose out of the wainscoting." All right, it's not a terribly important word, but let's see what wainscoting is. Here's a good picture. I mean, this is advanced vocabulary after all. It's this, when you have a wall and then you have half of the wall has sort of like a wood panel like this. This is wainscoting. There's a hole down there. I gave him a good fright, anyway. Rats, murmured Winston. In this room. They're all over the place, said Julia indifferently, as she lay down again. We've even got them in the kitchen at the hostel. Some parts of London are swarming with them. Okay, now we've got the word swarm, which we've already talked about in a previous chapter. But if you weren't watching that chapter, then I'm going to make you watch my swarm video. Because I like my swarm video. I think it's a good video. Nobody ever watches it. So here, I'm going to force you to watch my 1 minute long short video about swarms. Here it is. I'm proud of my swarm video. Oh, that always happens, right? You think something is very good. Nobody else likes it. I like it. Here's my swarm video. The word swarm is used to describe a group of insects. It's like a cloud of insects. Obviously, this is not a good thing. You can use swarm to talk about large groups of people in a negative way. It can be used as a noun, a swarm of people, or a verb. Let's practice using it as a verb. Here is a situation. A large group of people ran to the entrance at one time. Let's use swarm. The people swarmed the entrance, like insects. Let's make a when question. When did the people swarm? When did the people swarm the entrance? Here is the answer. When the subway doors opened. The people swarmed the entrance when the subway doors opened. Don't swarm. All right, so that's swarm. I hope that's pretty clear what it means. Let's go back and see how they use swarm in the story. So they're all over the place. The rats are all over the place, said Julia indifferently. As she lay down again, we even got them in the kitchen at the hostel. Some parts of London are swarming with rats. So hopefully from that definition of swarm, from that little short video, now that you understand what it means, you can imagine if she says parts of London are swarming with rats. They're everywhere. They're causing problems everywhere. Did you know that they attack children? Yes, they do. In some of these streets, a woman daren't leave a baby alone for 2 minutes. So this is a contraction, again, not common in modern English, or typical modern English. Dare not. A woman dare not. A woman wouldn't dare. I think in modern spoken English, you would say a woman wouldn't dare leave a baby alone for 2 minutes. But here they're using a bit of more old-fashioned sounding English. A woman daren't leave a baby alone for 2 minutes. It's the great huge brown ones that do it. And the nasty thing is that the brutes always, brute means like very strong and not very nice. So when something is brute, it's strong and people don't respond very well to it. Don't go on, said Winston, with his eyes tightly shut. So Winston hates this. He's saying, stop, I don't want to hear more about this. Of all the horrors in the world, a rat. She pressed herself against him and wound her limbs round him. Limbs are your arms, but also your legs. So, and wind is moving like in a circular motion. So she wound her limbs around him. That also, because because the author says limbs, could also be her legs. Maybe all four. As though to reassure him with the warmth of her body, he did not reopen his eyes immediately. For several moments, he had the feeling of being back in a nightmare, which had recurred from time to time throughout his life. It was always very much the same. He was standing in front of a wall of darkness. And on the other side of it, there was something unendurable. To endure something means that you can tolerate it. If something is unendurable, that means that you cannot tolerate it. You cannot handle it. It's too much for you. Something too dreadful to be faced. Dreadful means horrible. In the dream, his deepest feeling was always one of self-deception, because he did in fact know that what was behind the walls of darkness. With a deadly effort, like wrenching a piece out of his own brain. Wrenching means like pulling. Wrenching a piece out of his own brain, he could even have dragged the thing out into the open. He always woke up without discovering what it was, but somehow it was connected with what Julia had been saying when he cut her short. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's nothing. I don't like rats, that's all." "Don't worry, dear. We're not going to have the filthy brutes in here. I'll stuff the hole with a bit of sacking before we go, and next time we come here, I'll bring some plaster and bung it up properly." Already the black instant of panic was half forgotten. Feeling slightly ashamed of himself, he sat up against the bedhead. Julia got out of bed, pulled on her overalls, and made the coffee. The smell that rose from the saucepan was so powerful and exciting that they shut the window lest anybody outside should notice it and become inquisitive. What was even better than the taste of the coffee was the silky texture given to it by the sugar, a thing Winston had almost forgotten after years of saccharin. With one hand in her pocket and a piece of bread and jam in the other, Julia wandered about the room, glancing indifferently at the bookcase, pointing out the best way of repairing the gate-leg table, plumping herself down in the ragged arm chair. So remember, rag, that's like old material, like old sweaters. So if a chair is ragged, that means it's a very old chair, and the material on the chair is falling apart. It doesn't look very nice. To see if it was comfortable, and examining the absurd 12-hour clock with a sort of tolerant amusement. She brought the glass paperweight over to the bed to have a look at it in a better light. He took it out of her hand, fascinated as always by the soft, rain-watery appearance of the glass. "What is it, do you think?" said Julia. "I don't think it's anything. I mean, I don't think it was ever put to any use. That's what I like about it. It's a little chunk of history that they've forgotten to alter. It's a message from 100 years ago. If one knew how to read it. And that picture over there," she nodded at the engraving on the opposite wall, "would that be 100 years old? More. 200, I dare say. One can't tell. It's impossible to discover the age of anything nowadays." She went over to look at it. "Here's where the brute stuck out his nose," she said, kicking the wainscoting immediately below the picture. "What is this place? I've seen it before somewhere." "It's a church, or at least it used to be. St. Clement Danes, its name was." The fragment of rhyme that Charrington had taught him came back into his head, and he added, half nostalgically, "Orange and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's." To his astonishment, she capped the line. "You owe me 3 farthings, says the bells of St. Martin's." Well, I guess we have to say that in a rhyming way. "You owe me 3 farthings, says the bells of St. Martin's." "When will you pay me, says the bells of Old Bailey." I can't remember how it goes after that. But anyway, I remember it ends up, "Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head." It was like the two halves of a countersign. But there must be another line from the bells of Old Bailey. Perhaps it could be dug out of Mr. Charrington's memory, if he were suitably prompted. "Who taught you that?" he said. "My grandfather. He used to say it to me when I was a little girl. He was vaporized when I was 8. At any rate, he disappeared. I wonder what a lemon was, she added inconsequently. I've seen oranges. They're kind of round yellow fruit with a thick skin. I can remember lemons, said Winston. They were quite common in the 50s. They were so sour that it set your teeth on edge, even to smell them. I bet that picture's got bugs behind it, said Julia. I'll take it down and give it a good clean some day. I suppose it's almost time that we're leaving. I must start washing this paint off. What a bore. I'll get the lipstick off your face afterwards. Winston did not get up for a few minutes more. The room was darkening. He turned over towards the light, lazy, gazing into the glass paperweight. The inexhaustibly interesting thing was not the fragment of coral, but the interior of the glass itself. There was such depth of it. And yet it was almost as transparent as air. It was as though the surface of the glass had been the arch of the sky, enclosing a tiny world with its atmosphere complete. But he had the feeling that he could get inside it, and that in fact he was inside it. I better read that again. Let's start from the beginning of that paragraph. Winston did not get up for a few minutes more. The room was darkening. The room was getting darker. He turned over towards the light, lay gazing into the glass paperweight. So he's looking at this paperweight. You know, I better just find a picture of a paperweight. I know what a paperweight is, but it's possible that for two reasons you don't know what a paperweight is. Number one, I think that people don't use paperweights very much anymore. So it's kind of an old-fashioned thing. And number two, it's not a very common word if you're learning English, so we better take a look at it. Paperweight. So this is a paperweight. You just put it on paper, so that way the wind or somebody walking by, the papers don't fly. But people don't use papers so much anymore. So of course they don't really like paperweights, or they don't really use paperweights. But they're very decorative. They often look very pretty. So these are just examples of paperweights. Okay. Let's go back to the story here. So that's one of the old objects in the room that Winston likes to look at. And here he is. Julia's getting ready to leave. It's getting dark. And Winston's just laying in bed, looking at the paperweight, staring into the paperweight. The inexhaustibly interesting thing was not the fragment of coral, but the interior of the glass itself. So when you saw those pictures of paperweights, it's clear glass and then some kind of decoration in the middle. In this case, it's a piece of coral. Well, I better, in case you don't know what coral is, we should take a look at that. So this is coral. It comes from the sea. Let's see, coral carving, we'll say. And it's a pretty valuable item. Although I think now people can't really buy and sell it like they used to. It comes from the sea. It's red. That's coral. Okay. So he's looking at this paperweight with the coral inside of it. The inexhaustibly interesting thing was not the fragment of coral, but the interior of the glass itself. There was such depth to it. Depth, that's the noun form for deep. So when you look inside, it seemed really deep inside the paperweight. And yet it was almost as transparent as air. It was as though the surface of the glass had been an arch, this is an arch, of the sky, enclosing a tiny world with its atmosphere complete. So Winston is imagining that inside the paperweight, that's like a whole different world. He had the feeling that he could get inside of it, and in fact, he was in it. He was inside of it. So he's kind of imagining himself in that world, a completely different universe in the paperweight. Along with the mahogany bed, mahogany is a type of wood, and the gate leg table, and the clock, and the steel engraving, the paperweight itself. The paperweight was the room he was in, and the coral was Julia's life and his own, fixed in a sort of eternity at the heart of the crystal. All right, well, that was the end of chapter 4 of 1984, part 2. So next time we will. My dogs are going crazy. Next time we will read chapter 5 of part 2 of 1984. Thank you, everyone who stayed and watched, and I hope to see you again very soon. Goodbye.